Hi, my name's Dennis, and I've been a gardener for about 50 years, and tending and caring for plants have taught me some things I'd like to share with you about growing high quality vegetables, fruits, and medicinal herbs. So thank you for coming, and welcome to my garden. Okay, so here we are. It's the beginning of August. It was 96 degrees here today, and I'm transplanting cabbage. Now, I've had really good gardeners tell me, you are crazy. You're not supposed to be able to do that now. But there are a couple tricks that I'd like to share with you so you can kind of see how this can be done. We'll talk later about why I'm doing it in August. That's a whole other thing. But I'm going to take this little cabbage seedling that is starting to go into once it's in its fourth leaf and its sixth leaf is coming out of the center. That's a very critical spot in the life of a plant. It's saying, basically, I'm about to establish myself. I want to move this little baby plant over to the bed over there, but I want the plant to not know that it's been moved. And there are a couple ways you can do that. So if I take a very sharp knife and I go around this seedling here and pop out a little divot, I'm reinforcing something I did a week ago. I did exactly that a week ago. Now that little plant, when I did it a week ago, hit that edge and went, oh, I better put out some feeder roots. So it's established in that little divot, like in its own little kingdom. So it is happy as a clam. And I can go and lift that whole little chunk out, kind of like a big brownie, and that plant will not know it's been moved. But even if it did, I need to do something. I need to balance whatever I'm cutting out. So I'll go in here with a sharp knife and just take off the lowest leaf and the lowest leaf on that side. I've reduced that by 2 leaves, but the cabbage is now in a very balanced form. Its root has been cut and leaves have been taken off, and basically it doesn't even know it. It's as if some bug came along and chopped the leaf off, and it'll say, okay, I can grow that back again. I can lift it and it will not have any shock. And I'll take it over to the bed over there where I have a little special light well that I did, and we'll go over and take a look at that. So I'll just go in and pop that little guy out of there. Very nice, a very nice seedling. This is a special sauerkraut cabbage. And this bed was where I grew my fava beans last year. I cut them off. I left the roots there. I took the leaves off, put them down. I put some compost, a little bit of seabird guano, and some powdered kelp. The cabbage is going to go to heaven. So this bed has been dug 3 different times at very critical times in the life of a cabbage. And we'll talk about that later. Right now, that's some good looking dirt right there. And this plant is going to go, that has pretty clear, it doesn't even know it's been moved. I just drop that in there, bring up a little bit of soil around the roots, to establish it in there. It's neutral because the top and bottom have been balanced and cut. But tomorrow it's probably going to be 96. So I don't want to leave that plant in that condition because it's really hoping that October comes. That's what cabbage is really like. So what I found here in Sacramento, that if I want to do this, I have to build out of the mulch a light well. So what I found is I can take mulch like this, bring it way up, and leave a space down there that I can control during the day. If I see that cabbage is starting to fade a little bit from being hit by too much sun, I can just give it a little umbrella like that, and then in the evening give it a little spray. But it's in a light well, and the difference in temperature around that root, I've checked with the thermometer, is like 20 some degrees, 30 degrees in the middle of the summer. So this is about 8 or 9 inches of mulch, and the light is coming through. But right around the bottom of the cabbage, there's just open space. The mulch does not go around the cabbage. It just goes up into like a light well. And that cabbage will be very happy in there. It'll get all the light it needs. In a month, that'll be about that big. It'll burst out of there. All of them will burst out, and then they take off because it won't be 96 in a month. So that I'm doing that so that this cabbage has about leaves about that big at the fall equinox. If the leaves are about that big at the fall equinox, that plant is going to sail into October and November. So here's the cabbage that was transplanted 2 months ago, little baby cabbage. And it's about the size of a soccer ball now, but it'll get about like that, maybe about 6-7 pounds. That's going to be sauerkraut. I make my sauerkraut in December. We're at the very beginning of November, so this cabbage has another month to grow. And it's filling out now because it's going late into the year. So it's November 1st. We haven't had a frost yet here in the Central Valley, and we're still in harvest mode. Here's the cabbage that was transplanted 2 months ago. It's pretty robust looking, 10 inches across, but some aphids have started to show up. And so I spray them off, but they're pretty persistent because there's not a lot of frost that has happened to knock them back. So the question is, why are the aphids showing up? So for that, we need to have a little closer look at what's going on with the cabbage. So here's a nice head, and the inner leaves look pretty good, but you can see some aphids here, and the aphids go down underneath, but they're brought up here by the ants, and the real culprit for the aphids here is this leaf down there in the bottom. So I'm going to take that leaf off so you can see what's going on there. So now we have a blank space underneath with some dry mulch. And we can see on this leaf, there are like a gazillion aphid carcasses. It's a big old leaf. But this is not really going to do much for that head there because we're in November. I have about another month before this will turn into sauerkraut. But here's what was hitting the ground and starting to rot underneath the bottom. And that's what's bringing the aphids. It's like a little bridge to let them, the ants bring them up through the rotten one and then come up and go up here where it's a little more succulent. So if I lift this head here, I can see there's another one of those big ones down there. I'll just grab the leaf stalk with my fingers and pull it off. And there are the aphids. And we can see that the cabbage was actually starting to kind of go away here. There's nothing much feeding the head. So it doesn't matter that I take this off. I'll trim these big ones off of here. So I have another month to go before I harvest this head for sauerkraut at the beginning of December. And these big old leaves out here are not really going to do anything for this. It's sort of these middle-sized ones that are still okay. This one here is okay, that one's okay. This one here is okay. But the big ones are attracting aphids, especially on the side where the cabbage is leaning to have the big ones touch the ground. So I'll go through the whole bed of cabbage. I'll take that kind of leaf off of there. The aphids will stop being quite so bad all over them. And in a month, we'll make some sauerkraut. This is the cabbage that was trimmed back about 5 days ago. And my span is 9 inches. This cabbage is about 11 inches. And even though a lot of leaves were taken off the outside, the cabbage head itself really quickly expanded, as did the one next to it, and the one behind that, and the one behind that. So the taking off of the leaves on the outside to deal with the aphids actually created a kind of surge in the growth pattern of the head. That was kind of a nice thing to see. It's December, first week of December, and it's cabbage harvest time. So remember the little seedlings and then the transplanting. By this time of the year, they've had plenty of time to develop, and some of the heads are pretty nice. So we'll take this inside, and out of 3 heads, I'm estimating maybe 2 gallons of sauerkraut, maybe 1.5 gallons of sauerkraut, 2 gallons. That's a pretty good yield for a little small area. These 3 heads were in a 4-foot square. So 2 gallons of sauerkraut in 16 square feet. That's pretty good yield. Just bring it so you can see what you can do in a small space. You can raise a lot of food for yourself. So onto the shredder. Sauerkraut can go off for a number of reasons. Primary one is that some of the leaves are a little kind of flaccid like that. That doesn't make a good sauerkraut. And the other part is that some of these bottom parts here are really thick. And when you put that in the sauerkraut, it changes the way the ferment goes. The ideal is to have every part of the ferment be about the same size. So there's a way to maximize that with that kind of device, a shredder like that. And the first is to try to cut it. So we see we have one vein there, one vein there, one vein there. I'm just going to cut it right down the middle. And now we have two very nice halves of cabbage. But the core here, when you get grinding, the core with these larger leaves here, you can see there's some large ones there with the core. That doesn't make good sauerkraut. And these leaves on the side don't make good sauerkraut because they get flat and kind of flabby, so that like that. And these leaves here, when they go through the grater, it's slicing along them. They're big and big flat leaves, which is very unappetizing in a sauerkraut. So what we're after is these leaves right in here. And this has a small core and a lot of that, so we're good. But I'm going to trim these parts off so that the cabbage can go through the grater, or now it looks like that. And these leaves here, all of this, will make excellent sauerkraut. Well, what do you do with these? So these make very good soup cabbage. So all you need to do is take that one that's been cut off, very good for the soup pot, not good for sauerkraut, but very good cabbage for cooking. So we don't want to waste anything. We'll make everything last. But now that can be steamed to make very nice cabbage. In the process of shredding this, when we get down near the core, we'll just keep rotating it so that the parts that come off are very, very fine, about 1/8 of an inch, even a little thinner than that. So the trimming of the cabbage to go through the grater or the shredder ensures that the quality of the finished product is very great. Even something like that, very nice for eating, but a little problematic for sauerkraut, but we're going to slice right across that by trimming the cabbage up like that. So I thought I'd give you a little picture of the shredding of the cabbage and the way in which it works the best. So this is a beautiful, beautiful unit here. This is a Teflon sliding box. It's open at the bottom, and it has little grooves in the side here that slide along the rails of this stainless steel tray. This is from Ukraine. The tray stainless steel has three very sharp blades in it here. And they're set at an angle where if you slide a cabbage across them, it peels off about 1/8 of an inch of cabbage, shredded. Beautiful. And this then is a little maple box that I made that has runners on the side, a little some at the end to hold on to the tray. But the shredded cabbage falls out of the stainless steel and makes a little mound in here, and then can be put very easily into our crock. So I'll give you a picture of how that works. So here's a cabbage head. It's been trimmed here to fit inside the box. Your fingers are up out of the way of the blades. And now in the box, perfect shredded cabbage to be tamped down inside a crock. This is ideal sauerkraut. So here are a couple other things that I've found to be very useful. Here's the cabbage. It's a beautiful shredded, about 1/8 of an inch shredded cabbage. We'll go in the crock, and what goes in it are salt, and I use aniseed. I don't like caraway; it's a little too bitter. So here's the salt I use. It's a rock salt. It's a Himalayan. It's a coarse. I find the coarse salt is better. It doesn't form in little pockets when you layer in the cabbage. And for me, that's an essential aspect. So it's a coarser rock salt, and then aniseed. I like to use aniseed rather than caraway or fennel because it gives a kind of floral note to the sauerkraut, which is very nice. This is a tamper here. It's made from a piece of plum wood that fell down, weighs about maybe 2 pounds. And what I found is the worst sauerkraut happens when you just pound the heck out of it. So the weight of this little guy is enough to tamp the cabbage rather than smash it. So something like this is very useful. And then we have the crock. This is a 2-gallon crock, and a little bit of tamping makes the job go very well. So there's a kind of an art to this, sort of a Polish art, to take the shredded cabbage, and I don't want to just dump it in there. I'm kind of spinning it around a little bit so that it swirls into the bottom. I want to make about a 1/2 inch of cabbage down there. Looks kind of like that. Take just a pinch of rock salt, sprinkle it around, pinch of aniseed, and then very light tamping. The lighter the tamping, the weight of this little tamper is just flattening that cabbage against the bottom of the crock. So now that 1/2 inch is down to about 1/4 of an inch, but it's not all smashed up. It's just flattened cabbage. And the reason why you want to do that is because you don't want any air in this. The little bacteria that do the salt ferment, do it without air. So what we're trying to do with the tamping is just make sure that there's no air in there. I want to just put enough of the salt in there so that the juice from the cabbage will dissolve it. A little bit of anise helps when you eat the cabbage so that you don't get a lot of gas. I do a little tamping, and it makes a little mat of cabbage. The mat is now about 1/2 inch down at the bottom of the crock. And I'll just keep doing this again and again and again until the crock is about 3/4 full. When it's 3/4 full, we get a nice dinner plate and lay it on there. Here's a dinner plate, fits inside there. I put a rock on top of it, and it presses down on the cabbage, and the salt pulls moisture from the cabbage and makes an effective seal against the air. And then I put this crock on a cat bed. We'll look at that in a little bit, but the tamping is where the deal is. If you tamp it well and don't smash it, but just tamp it and then press it, the liquid seals it off. It takes about 5 or 6 days of fermenting on the cat bed, which is about 100 degrees or so. And then it's ready to put in 1/2-gallon jars, and we put it in the fridge. When that happens, we normally get about 5 or 6 gallons of sauerkraut. We put an ounce of it in a little dish in the morning and have it with breakfast. And it's a total antiviral, antibacterial digestive aid. Sauerkraut, kapusta in Polish. So here's the crock. The cabbage all temped down, salt, aniseeds, 2-gallon crock, that's 4 heads of cabbage, a couple bags of trimming, and now the cabbage is sitting on the device I use for fermenting. It's a cat bed. And it plugs in. It's plastic, so it takes a lot of beating, and that cat bed will keep a temperature just above 100 degrees to start the ferment. You take a plate, take a heavy rock, cover that with a cloth, turn the cat bed on, plug it in, and check it every day. You'll see water will come up. the pressure of the rock on the plate starts to pull up water. We can already see there's water coming up. That's a brine that will keep the cabbage secure in the ferment. It takes about 6 days for that to ferment out. And then we put it in half-gallon jars and put the jars in a small fridge in the garage. And we eat about 5 gallons, 6 gallons of sauerkraut a year in small doses. Very good for you and very easy to make. If you just go slow and make sure that when you cut the cabbage, it's uniform, and when you tamp it gently and don't smash it. This cabbage is ready to turn into sauerkraut.